back to another lesson of the Logos and Letters. My name is Leighton, and we're going to continue on with a point here, which is kind of difficult to translate really, but is a very, very important point. It's to clarify a lot of what we've learnt so far. So it starts down here and it goes, Kai ho logos de hos autos. So what's the same? Hos autos, the same. Speech, particularly audible speech, not ones written down on paper, pen and ink, or typed or whatnot, but actually spoken, words that are spoken. Hologos de hos autos. It's the same because it doesn't have positions, but it has an order. All right, it doesn't have positions. Why? Because it's spoken, it comes and goes, and it just has an order. Okay, you say particular syllables before other syllables, you say particular words before other words, and so on and so forth. But because they don't persist and last in such a way, therefore we do not say that they hold a position. We just say that they have an order. And the order is very important. The order is extremely important. If you start messing around with the order in which things are said by choosing particular words, cherry picking in a way, or taking things out of context, you've created a new whole. And in that new whole, you've either separated the prior from the posterior or the posterior from the prior, both being almost the same thing. And with this new whole, you can create, you can separate meaning and separate order from what was said, and that can drastically change the significance of what you have chosen to retain and what you've chosen to discard. And that is a common everyday thing that we experience all the time. Even when we argue with our friends and whatnot, they just in a joking way might choose 2 or 3 words that you said and hang on those words and create some humorous sort of reaction from you and so on and so forth. But when we come back to this lesson here, we can see 3 things that he's used to teach this lesson, and that's speech, spoken speech, to ritmo, number, and time, number, speech. I mean, come on now, let's be real. Does this not encompass an enormous majority of topics and conversations and situations and hypotheticals that could be explored in the study of logic and argument and all sorts of things that have to do with this education? Of course it does. So what we're learning here has quite a universal application, which is all the better for us. But let's continue on. Udengar hypomenai ton morionautu. Right? So hypomenai doesn't persist. None of the parts of a spoken speech, the syllables and the words, whatnot, they don't persist. Ton morion, its parts. So ton morion autu ala airetai te kai ukestin eti tuto lavain. Right? So, and according to the aforementioned things that we've just spoken about, we cannot still say that this has anything to hold on to, labain, something to grasp onto, and say, hey, look, it has a position. Okay, it persists. We can see it, touch it, or feel it, or hear it. Of course, we can hear it, but it's not like these physical things that we were looking at, right? That holds a particular position. Okay, so he's obviously speaking, but where are his words? They come and go. He's Hebrew or he's Aramaic, whatever he's speaking right now. Joseph, it comes and goes. It's not holding on to position, but Joseph obviously holds a position. He's physical. But even though it doesn't hold a position, his words, they still have significance. They still have meaning. They still have an order. Okay, they have a taksin. Okay, so go back to this. Hostaukan hie thessis ton morionautu. So we're not going, and thus we should not say that its parts, ton morion autu, its parts have position. Igen medan hupom menai, right? Because none of it persists. So he's really drilling on this point. If it persists, if it exists, if it's substantial, it's holding a position. If it doesn't, it's not holding position, right? He's drawing this line here, which is really, really good for clarification. Tame nun ekthesine konton ton morion sunesteke tadeuk ex ekonton thesin. Now this is a strange one to translate, because if you just go straight ahead, it sounds like he contradicts himself, right? Could be a corruption of the text, could be whatnot, but I seriously doubt that it's a corruption of the text. I just think that he's written this down for himself as a sort of like a lecture guide, and he knows exactly what he means by this. So we start here. Therefore, there are those things that its parts hold a position. Okay, its parts hold a position. And there are those other things that do not hold a position. Because he was just specifically speaking about these quantities that none of them hold a position, it sounds like he's contradicting himself. It's like you've just gone and spent so long speaking about how they don't hold a position, they're not physical, they just hold order, but then you go ahead and say that, hey, look, there are these things that do actually hold a position. I think there are two explanations for this, and not really mutually exclusive either. He's referring to all of what he's discussed so far. Wow, I've still got all this here. I need to get rid of that. All of what he's discussed so far, or he's saying that there are special types of position. If we take the second one, for example, this is a brand new lesson that we can teach right now. We can imagine that he is talking about relative positions to one another, not like physical positions that we see soldiers or whoever holding, dancers or people in an orchestra, holding the position, people on a soccer team or a NRL team holding position. He could be here putting his finger on the pulse of the issue that, or not the issue, but the topic that some orders have a relative position to one another. Okay, so for example, in your speech, your one syllable precedes another and so on and so forth. Okay, that's really nice and simple, but think about time now for a second. That doesn't really have the same situation, doesn't it? So where is it? Tu chrono, right? The parts of time, ton tu chrono morion, have a relative position. We say past in relation to present and future. We say future in relation to present and past, and present in relation to past and future. So some, he could be saying, some have like a relative position and some don't. Okay, so he might not be saying that there are physical, there are some that don't have like physical positions, but they can still have, by reason alone, a position. Both are true in that sense. So I don't know what he meant out of those two. I don't know if he was just speaking about all of this in general, or he was trying to get us to realize that particular point, or both. I wasn't there when he taught this lesson, which is a shame. I wasn't there to ask him, clarify. I'm sure someone did in his lessons if this is what he read off, and there's a bunch of young Greek men listening to this. I'm sure one of them raised their hand and So, oh, didascale, you know, tisestin, what is this, you know? But regardless, both are true. There are some quantities that have positions, others don't, and there are some which by reason alone have a relative position amongst its parts. Okay? Because that's what we're talking about here, the parts of these quantities. Do they have position? Do they have order? Do they have both? Okay, if so, is it a physical one or is it one by reason? So on and so forth. All right, we'll leave it there. That was sort of a dense lesson, and I hope that has like sort of clarified things a bit more, especially if some people have thought ahead. I know that would be frustrating because you're not in an actual classroom right now. If you think ahead and you come to these sort of issues or conclusions, you might want to, in a real classroom, you would raise your hand and you could just ask the question and get cut straight to the chase. But some others, you've got to suffer and wait for me to get to it. And to those people, you know, my heart goes out to you because waiting for me, you know, that's some sort of hell in itself. So let's leave that there. The next lesson is going to be on like what is curiosity, the defining feature, right? He's always looking for the defining feature of things. And yeah, we'll get on to some more stuff that isn't so much about position and order. So if that's something you've been looking forward to, stick around for the next lesson. But as always, si semper fortis in opere tuo. My name is Liam, and I'll see you next time.